Human behavior often looks chaotic on the surface, but underneath it follows patterns so consistent that once they are seen, it becomes almost impossible to unsee them. Someone pulls away every time a conversation gets deeper. Another always turns a simple disagreement into a dramatic conflict. Someone else constantly jokes when things get serious, as if any real vulnerability has to be hidden behind humor. These are not random quirks. These are behavior patterns, shaped by experiences, beliefs, and emotional memories that the conscious mind barely remembers, but the nervous system never forgot. Understanding these patterns is one of the most powerful forms of self-awareness because it reveals that what looks like personality is often self-protection in disguise. Imagine watching a movie where the main character keeps making the same mistake over and over. They trust the wrong person again. They avoid the conversation again. They sabotage the opportunity again. As a viewer, it becomes easy to predict what they will do next. Now, imagine the same thing happening in real life, but the main character is not on a screen. The main character is a real human being, repeating the same reactions without realizing it. That is what human behavior looks like from the outside when patterns are not conscious. People are living inside stories and scripts they did not write, yet they repeat them faithfully. Once this is understood, judgment starts to soften. Behavior is no longer good or bad. It is simply patterned, and anything patterned can be observed, decoded, and transformed. The first key to understanding human behavior patterns is this: behavior is rarely about the present moment. The nervous system is not asking, "What is happening right now?" It is asking, "What does this remind me of?" A raised voice, a distant tone, a slow reply, a disapproving look, a certain kind of silence. All of these may resemble something old. A parent's anger, a caregiver's emotional absence, a teacher's humiliation, a childhood moment of shame. The body remembers the emotional charge, even when the mind has forgotten the details. So when something in the present resonates with something from the past, the body reacts first. Only after the body reacts does the mind explain why. That explanation feels like truth, but it is often just a story built around an emotional pattern. The pattern activates so quickly that it feels like reality. But what is actually happening is a pattern replay. A person is not overreacting to this moment. The pattern is reacting to every moment it resembles. Beneath every behavior pattern, there is an unseen structure. At a simple level, it can be seen as a sequence that repeats itself again and again. First, there is a trigger. Something happens. A message is not answered, a plan changes, a tone shifts, a need is denied, a boundary is crossed. The trigger is just an event. On its own, it is neutral. The second step is the meaning the mind assigns. The message is not just delayed, it becomes a sign of rejection. The plan did not just change, it becomes proof of not being important. The tone did not just shift, it becomes a threat. The mind quickly concludes, "I am not wanted," or "I am in danger," or "this will end badly." This meaning is shaped by old experiences, not by the event itself. The third step is emotional activation. As soon as the meaning is assigned, the body reacts. The chest tightens, the heart speeds up, the stomach sinks, the face heats, the throat closes. The body is preparing for something bad, based not on what is truly happening, but on what the pattern predicts will happen. The fourth step is the inner narrative. The mind starts telling a story that reinforces what the body is feeling. This always happens. No one ever stays. People cannot be trusted. It was stupid to open up. This is just like before. The story pulls evidence from memory, selectively remembering every moment that matches the pattern and ignoring the ones that do not. The fifth step is the behavior. The person shuts down, attacks, apologizes excessively, explains too much, clings, runs away, numbs out, or distracts. And the behavior then reinforces the pattern. Shutting down pushes people away, which then proves the belief that people leave. Attacking creates defensive distance, which proves the belief that conflict leads to disconnection. Over-apologizing attracts controlling people, which proves the belief that kindness will be taken advantage of. The pattern becomes a loop, feeding itself. Seen this way, behavior becomes far less mysterious. A person who constantly avoids hard conversations is not just bad at communication. That avoidance pattern probably formed in an environment where speaking up led to punishment, ridicule, or emotional chaos. The nervous system learned, silence is safer than truth. With enough repetition, silence no longer feels like a choice. It feels like the only way to survive love. Another person might constantly chase, over-text, over-explain, and try to fix everything immediately. Underneath that pursuit pattern is often a nervous system that learned, if distance appears, connection is in danger, and it is my job to fix it. Maybe love was withdrawn as a form of control. Maybe affection only appeared after performing or pleasing. The pattern then says, if someone pulls away, it is my fault, and I must close the gap. Again, this no longer feels like strategy. It feels like love. Sometimes the same pattern shows up in completely different areas of life, which makes it even harder to recognize. Someone who learned, it is dangerous to disappoint others, might overcommit socially, overdeliver at work, and even ignore physical exhaustion just to avoid saying no. On the surface, it looks like generosity or ambition. Underneath, it is the same fear of disapproval running through friendships, career, and health. Another person might carry a pattern of, if I do not control everything, everything will fall apart. That pattern can appear in relationships, in parenting, in group projects, even in how the fridge is organized. It is not about the dishes, the deadlines, or the details. It is about nervous system safety. Once the pattern is understood, all these scattered situations suddenly start to look like different chapters of the same story. The mind rarely says, I am acting out a pattern. The mind says, this is who I am. This is how love works. This is how people are. That is why pattern work is so transformative. It separates who I am from what I learned to do to stay safe. One of the most important insights about human behavior patterns is that they always serve a purpose, or at least they did at some point. No pattern appears by accident. The avoider stayed quiet to avoid being hurt by unpredictable adults. The people pleaser learned that making others comfortable decreased the threat of anger, rejection, or abandonment. The controller learned that if everything is managed and anticipated, chaos will not explode suddenly. The overachiever learned that worthiness was not given freely, it had to be earned. The joker learned that if everything turned into humor, heavy emotions would not crush the room. These patterns were adaptive. They were intelligent. At one time, they were necessary. The problem is not that these patterns existed. The problem is that they continued long after the environment changed. The child grew up, the home changed, the people changed, but the pattern did not receive the update. So now, the body is reacting to danger that no longer exists. Or it is reacting to danger that is much smaller than it feels. This is why someone can feel overwhelming panic when a message is left on read, or intense shame when a small mistake is made. The reaction belongs to an older version of life. Understanding behavior patterns means asking a different question. Instead of asking, what is wrong with this person for acting like this? The question becomes, what did this pattern once protect? That question alone can shift everything. Suddenly, the angry outburst is not just aggression. It is a shield designed long ago to keep hurt at a distance. The emotional shutdown is not coldness. It is a freeze response designed to minimize harm. The constant apologizing is not weakness. It is a strategy for maintaining connection in the face of threat. Once this is seen, blame starts to dissolve, not just for others, but for oneself. Many people carry deep shame about the patterns they act out. They think, why do I always do this? Why can't I be different? Why do I ruin things? That shame itself is part of the pattern. If the pattern is protecting a belief like, I am unworthy, then shame is the glue that holds the pattern in place. Understanding the pattern is not about self-attack. It is about self-clarity. At a deeper level, human behavior patterns are formed around a few core psychological needs. The need for safety, the need for belonging, the need for dignity, the need for autonomy. When these needs are threatened repeatedly, the nervous system builds patterns to protect them. For example, when emotional safety is repeatedly threatened, the system might create a hyper-vigilant pattern that sees danger in every subtle shift. When belonging is threatened, the system might create a chameleon pattern that adapts to every room, never showing the full self. When dignity is threatened, the system might create a perfectionist pattern that never allows vulnerability, only polished competence. When autonomy is threatened, the system might create a resistance pattern that automatically pushes back against any request, no matter how reasonable. The behaviors look different, but the structure is the same. A core need, a perceived threat, a protective pattern. Seen this way, human behavior patterns become maps of unmet needs and unresolved experiences. There is also a quieter layer. Patterns do not just shape how someone reacts to others, they shape how someone speaks internally. A person with a long-standing self-silencing pattern may not only stay quiet with others, but may also interrupt their own desires before they fully form. The inner voice might say, "That is too much. Do not ask for that. Who do you think you are?" long before any external conflict appears. Another pattern might constantly compare, turning every interaction into a measurement of worth. They are ahead, they are better, they are more loved. These internal patterns of thought and behavior reinforce the emotional climate inside, even when the outside appears calm. Paying attention to repeated inner sentences can reveal just as much as observing outer reactions. There is also a spiritual dimension to understanding behavior patterns. Patterns are not just psychological habits, they are invitations. Every time the same pattern repeats, life is presenting an opportunity to see it, to bring consciousness into it, and to choose differently. The repeated argument is an invitation to see how conflict is being handled. The repeated disappointment is an invitation to examine expectations, boundaries, and self-trust. The repeated burnout is an invitation to question worthiness and rest. The repeated attraction to the same type of person is an invitation to look at what is being reenacted from childhood. Patterns are not punishments. They are loops asking to be completed with awareness. From a spiritual psychological perspective, understanding patterns is a form of compassion training. When someone recognizes their own patterns, they begin to recognize patterns in others without taking everything personally. A partner's shutdown becomes not, they do not care, but their freeze pattern is active because intimacy feels dangerous. A friend's overtalking becomes not, they do not care about my perspective, but their pursuit pattern is trying to keep connection alive. This does not mean tolerating harm or abandoning boundaries. It means seeing behavior as pattern instead of identity. That shift allows boundaries to be firm and hearts to remain soft. On a practical level, how does someone begin to truly understand their own behavior patterns instead of just hearing about them as theory? The first step is noticing repetition. Whenever a person finds themselves saying, "Why does this always happen to me?" or "Every relationship ends the same way," or "I always react like this," a pattern is speaking. Patterns speak in always and never. Those words are rarely accurate, but they reveal where the mind experiences repetition. Writing down 3 or 4 situations that feel similar is often enough to reveal the underlying pattern. Maybe in all of them, there was a moment of perceived disrespect that led to sudden withdrawal, or a moment of uncertainty that led to controlling behavior, or a moment of emotional risk that led to making a joke. Once the pattern is named, it begins to lose its invisibility. The second step is tracing the pattern backwards. When did this way of reacting first make sense? Not when did it first appear, but when did it first become useful? The avoidant pattern might trace back to a home where emotions were punished or mocked. The perfectionist pattern might trace back to achievement being the only time love felt free. The constant caretaker pattern might trace back to parents who leaned on the child emotionally, turning the child into an unofficial therapist. These origins are not about blaming the past. They are about understanding why the pattern formed so that the nervous system can finally hear, "That was then. This is now." The third step is feeling the body's role in the pattern. Behavior is not just thought and choice. It is sensation and impulse. Every pattern has a physical signature. The urge to run away, to raise the voice, to cry, to shut down, to fix, to explain, to disappear. All of these have a body component. Noticing where tension appears in the body is a powerful entry point into understanding. Does the jaw clench when boundaries are needed but not expressed? Does the chest constrict when someone disagrees? Does the stomach twist when someone asks for help? Those body sensations are the pattern's alarm bells. Learning to sit with them without immediately reacting begins to rewire the pattern. The fourth step is experimenting with small, opposite actions. Patterns are not broken through force or self-blame. They are slowly rewritten through consistent, gentle counter movements. If the pattern is always apologizing when nothing was actually done wrong, the small experiment might be to stay silent and wait, even for just 5 seconds, before saying anything. If the pattern is always staying silent, the experiment might be to say one honest sentence in moments where the pattern would normally shut down. If the pattern is always over-explaining, the experiment might be to answer with a short, clear statement once per conversation. These micro-shifts send powerful messages to the nervous system. They say, it is possible to do something different and still be safe. Over time, the pattern loosens. It may still activate, but it is no longer in full control. There is a subtle humor in all of this. Many people think they are complicated and unpredictable, while their patterns are incredibly predictable from the outside. The same fight, the same escape, the same dynamic, the same story. Once patterns are seen, they become almost comically repetitive. This is not to minimize the pain they cause, but to emphasize how structured they are. The mind that believes this is just chaos often finds relief in seeing that it is not chaos. It is a system, and systems can be changed. Understanding human behavior patterns is not about becoming a cold analyst, labeling every behavior, and turning life into a clinical report. It is about bringing warmth and clarity to the parts of experience that once felt confusing and overwhelming. Instead of drowning in, "Why am I like this?" pattern awareness allows a calmer question to arise. What is this trying to protect? And is that still needed? That question alone opens the door to immense growth. When patterns are understood, relationships shift, communication changes, self-talk softens, choices become less reactive and more conscious. The same triggers may still appear, but they no longer automatically pull the same levers. There is space. In that space, a new behavior can emerge. A new response can be chosen. A new pattern can be born. Understanding behavior patterns, in the end, is about reclaiming authorship. The scripts learned long ago do not have to be the scripts lived forever. They can be edited. They can be rewritten. They can be replaced with patterns rooted not in fear, but in truth, boundaries, connection, and self-respect. If these reflections brought clarity about the patterns running beneath the surface of behavior, this is an invitation to stay on this journey of deep psychological and spiritual understanding. For more explorations into the mind, emotional healing, and inner transformation, subscribing to this channel keeps these insights close. Liking this video helps this kind of content reach others who are also trying to understand themselves and the people they love. Sharing it with someone who is stuck in repeating cycles might give them the language they have been missing. And if there is a pattern that became visible while listening, naming it in the comments can be the first courageous step in bringing that pattern from the shadows into the light, where it can finally begin to change.